What you are about to read is not intended to create fear or disturb your sense of balance, even though it may feel intense if taken too quickly. It speaks instead to awareness and recognition of patterns that often go unnoticed in everyday life. Moments of delay, silence, and uncertainty are not empty spaces but transitions that shape understanding. Over time, what may have felt like setbacks can also be viewed as realignments, allowing circumstances to settle into place more naturally than expected. There is a quiet intelligence in how timing unfolds, even when it is not immediately visible. You may notice that certain experiences repeat or echo previous ones, encouraging deeper reflection rather than reaction. This is not about urgency, but about clarity and steadiness. As understanding develops, those who remain centered tend to see connections more clearly, while impulsive responses often obscure them. What is unfolding is less about sudden change and more about recognition of a longer pattern that has been forming quietly in the background of your experience, inviting you to slow your response and observe with patience rather than assumption. When clarity arrives, it does not require panic, but presence. It becomes easier to understand that not everything needs immediate interpretation. Some insights reveal themselves gradually as perspective matures. The value lies in remaining open without forcing conclusions too early, allowing truth to settle naturally, rather than being rushed into definition. Moving forward with calm awareness allows you to recognize meaning without distortion or fear. It supports a clearer understanding of what has been unfolding beneath the surface all along. Trust that clarity comes when the mind is steady and receptive, not rushed, forced. Once you see it clearly, you will never unsee it. That is why this message asks you to breathe, to slow your thoughts, and to stay present. Nothing is being taken from you, something is being returned to you. Listen carefully now, because this is where perception shifts. For a long time, you were encouraged to focus on the surface of situations, on visible actions, spoken words, and immediate outcomes. But the real story has always been happening underneath. Certain people around you have not been acting from the roles you assumed they had. Some were not against you, even when it felt like betrayal. Others were not as supportive as they appeared, even when they smiled. This is not about blame. This is about clarity. The truth is that multiple decisions affecting your life were influenced quietly, subtly, through conversations you were not present for, and intentions that were never spoken aloud. That may sound unsettling, but it is not meant to make you anxious. It is meant to make you aware. Awareness is power when you stay calm. You were being observed more than you realized, measured not by what you said, but by how you reacted under pressure. When you felt confused, that confusion was intentional. When you felt uncertain, that uncertainty was part of a larger test. The truth is that someone underestimated your ability to stay composed, and someone else quietly noticed it. What you are learning now is not about discovering enemies. It is about discovering who understood your potential before you did. This is why recent memories keep resurfacing, why old conversations suddenly feel different, why moments from the past replay in your mind with new meaning. You are not overthinking. You are finally seeing. There is a reason this revelation could not come earlier. If you had known everything before now, it would have overwhelmed you, and that reaction would have changed the outcome. Timing matters more than information. The truth is that events had to unfold in a specific order so that responsibility, accountability, and intention could fully reveal themselves without interference. You were placed in positions where your choices mattered deeply, even though you were not told how much was at stake. Some people expected you to react impulsively, to expose yourself emotionally, or to walk away too soon. You did not. Even when you felt drained, you stayed. Even when you felt misunderstood, you remained respectful. That restraint was not weakness. It was evidence. Evidence that you could handle authority over your own reactions. Evidence that you would not misuse knowledge when it was finally given to you. The truth you are about to fully understand is layered. On the surface, it looks like simple misunderstanding. Beneath that, it is strategic silence. And beneath that, it is preparation. You were never meant to chase explanations. You were meant to grow into a position where explanations would come to you naturally. This is why things that once felt personal now feel distant. You have outgrown the need to react. And because of that, you are now being trusted with the full picture. What you must understand next is subtle, but crucial. The truth is not dramatic in the way movies portray it. It does not arrive with noise or confrontation. It arrives quietly and rearranges your understanding from the inside. When you finally realize how certain situations were guided, you may feel a moment of shock, not because something bad happened, but because something intentional did. You were protected from outcomes that would have limited you. You were redirected from paths that looked attractive, but carried long-term consequences. And yes, some relationships were allowed to fade because they could not grow with you. This does not mean anyone was evil. It means not everyone was aligned. Alignment is rare. That is why it is valuable. The truth you are learning now explains why doors closed without explanation, why plans changed at the last moment, why opportunities appeared just after disappointment. None of that was accidental. You were being positioned, not punished. And now that positioning is complete, clarity replaces confusion. Calm replaces doubt. Understanding replaces fear. This is the moment where you stop asking why things happen to you and start recognizing how they happened for you. Stay with this final thought, because it anchors everything. The entire truth is not meant to make you emotional. It is meant to make you steady. When you fully accept what has been unfolding behind the scenes, you will realize that your role was never to control outcomes. Your role was to remain true, observant, and composed. You succeeded. You're reading this at a quieter moment, when things feel less overwhelming than before. From here, you may start noticing a subtle change in how you interpret situations. Conversations might feel more straightforward, and choices that once felt heavy may begin to feel more manageable. This isn't because the world around you has transformed overnight, but because your way of responding to it is evolving. Clarity often arrives slowly, not through urgency, but through patience and reflection. If you allow yourself to stay steady, without rushing toward conclusions, you may find that what happens next becomes easier to understand in time. This is not an ending, but a transition into a more aware phase of thinking and feeling. As things settle, you may also recognize that experiences which once felt overwhelming now carry less emotional weight. This doesn't mean you are disconnected. It suggests you are becoming more composed and observant. With that shift, situations that used to trigger strong reactions may now feel like simple information rather than emotional challenges. Growth often shows itself in this quiet way, through increased balance rather than intensity. What follows in your path will make more sense when you remain centered and open to understanding rather than reacting quickly. Some events in your past may not have been fully explained at the time, not because your presence lacked value, but because timing and readiness play a role in how we process information. In time, you may notice that your responses become steadier, your perspective broader, and your ability to navigate uncertainty more natural, allowing you to move forward with a sense of quiet confidence that does not depend on external validation any longer. You were allowed to see only outcomes, not intentions, because intentions reveal power dynamics. Some people acted from fear of losing control, others acted from fear of being exposed, and a very small number acted from genuine concern for your long-term stability. You were placed in the middle of these forces without being told their names, because your neutrality was being observed. How you treated people who confused you, how you spoke when you were unsure, how you behaved when you were left without explanations. All of it mattered. This was never about testing your loyalty to others. It was about testing your loyalty to your own values under pressure. That is why you now feel strangely detached from past emotional weight. It has served its purpose. The truth is that your composure rewrote the outcome in your favor long before you realized anything was happening at all. There is something else you need to see clearly now. Not everyone who stepped back from you did so out of rejection. Some stepped back because proximity would have compromised what was being arranged. Silence was used as a shield, not as abandonment. Distance was used as a filter, not as punishment. This is difficult to accept, because the mind wants clear villains and clear heroes. But reality rarely operates that way. The truth is quieter and far more calculated. You were being moved out of environments that could not support your next version. You were being separated from emotional noise so your judgment could sharpen. And yes, this felt lonely at times. That loneliness was not emptiness. It was space being created. Space for discernment. Space for perspective. Space for strength. When you understand this, the pain associated with past confusion loses its grip. You stop replaying moments, not because you forgot them, but because you finally understand why they had to happen exactly as they did. Now understand this next point without letting your emotions rise. Some truths are shocking not because they are cruel, but because they reveal how intentional everything was. You were never overlooked. You were never forgotten. You were never misjudged in the way you thought. In fact, your restraint placed you in a position of quiet respect. People noticed what you did not say. They noticed what you refused to become under stress. They noticed your ability to remain fair even when you were uncertain. That observation changed decisions behind closed doors. Paths were altered. Outcomes were delayed. Not to test your patience, but to protect your integrity. This is why rushing was never encouraged in your life. You were meant to arrive, not collide. The truth now clarifies why things that seemed close never fully crossed your path until now. Timing was safeguarding you, and timing is finally aligning. Let this final realization anchor you as we move forward. The entire truth is not about uncovering secrets for the sake of drama. It is about recognizing your evolution. You are no longer in a phase where reactions define you. You are entering a phase where awareness guides you. What comes next will require calm confidence, not emotional urgency. The truth will continue to reveal itself naturally, without force, without confrontation, and without chaos, as long as you remain grounded. This is not a moment to rush ahead or look back with regret. This is a moment to stand exactly where you are, steady and observant. The clarity you are gaining now is preparing you for a shift that cannot be reversed. And when it fully arrives, you will understand why staying calm was always the most powerful choice you could make, my beloved child. At this stage, it becomes essential that you understand why calm is no longer just advice but a requirement. The truth that continues to surface is not explosive by nature, yet it has the power to disrupt anyone who still seeks validation, revenge, or emotional closure. You are beyond that now. The reason this truth is arriving in measured pieces is because it is not meant to overwhelm you, but to integrate into you. You are not being handed answers to react to. You are being handed awareness to operate from. This is why your intuition has been unusually sharp lately, why you sense shifts before they happen, and why certain situations feel resolved without conversation. You are aligning with understanding instead of emotion. And when that alignment happens, truth stops feeling threatening and starts feeling inevitable. What is unfolding now is confirmation, not surprise. Here is where the narrative quietly changes direction. There comes a stage in life when you slowly understand that not everyone who once seemed unclear or distant owed you an explanation. It was never about their unwillingness to be honest, but about your own journey toward understanding things on a deeper, personal level. When everything is explained to you, you lean on those explanations. But when insight develops within you, it builds a kind of independence that cannot be taken away. That shift is now quietly happening inside you. Clarity is no longer something arriving from outside voices. It is forming from within your own awareness. You are starting to notice how situations that once felt random are now linking together in a meaningful way. Things that felt delayed now seem timed with purpose. Endings that felt sudden now appear necessary, and new beginnings no longer feel accidental. Even the confusion you went through had its own role, shaping your patience and teaching you to observe life more carefully instead of reacting too quickly. It trained you to stay silent when needed, to listen more deeply, and to maintain dignity even in uncertainty. These traits were not given by chance. They were built through experience and are now becoming strengths you can rely on. As this understanding settles, there is a quiet realization that answers often arrive not when you chase them aggressively, but when you stop forcing them to appear. They emerge naturally when your mind is calm enough to recognize them. You are beginning to see patterns in people's behavior, in timing, and in repeated life experiences that once seemed unrelated. These patterns were never meant to block you. They were guiding you, showing you what to move away from, what deserves your attention, and where your growth truly lies. What makes this awareness feel intense is not negativity, but responsibility, because once you see clearly, the way you move forward can never be the same again. Once you see clearly, you cannot pretend you do not. That is why this phase requires steadiness. You are stepping into conscious choice, not emotional reaction. Understand this next layer without judgment. Some people will never admit the role they played in your journey, not because they are hiding, but because they themselves may not fully understand it. Others will recognize it instantly and stay silent out of respect for your process. Silence does not always mean avoidance. Sometimes it means acknowledgement without interference. You are learning now that closure does not always come from conversation. Sometimes it comes from comprehension, and comprehension is what you are gaining now. You no longer need to revisit old moments to seek answers. The answers are revealing themselves in how calm you feel when you remember them. Emotional charge fades when understanding takes its place. That is how you know you are ready for what comes next. Hold this final truth steady within you. What is unfolding is not designed to isolate you. It is designed to elevate you. As truth becomes clearer, your circle will naturally adjust, not through conflict, but through alignment. You will feel less compelled to explain yourself and more comfortable letting your actions speak. This is the shift. This is the transition from reacting to leading your own direction. The truth will continue to arrive, not as shock, but as certainty, as long as you remain grounded. Calm is no longer something you practice. It is something you embody. And from this place, the next revelation will not unsettle you. It will empower you, my beloved child. Now you are entering the phase where the truth stops feeling abstract and starts becoming practical. This is where understanding begins to influence your choices in real time, not emotionally, but intelligently. You may notice that situations which once demanded effort now resolve themselves with minimal energy from you. This is not coincidence. It is alignment responding to your composure. The reason calm is emphasized again and again is because panic clouds perception, and perception is everything at this stage. You are no longer reacting to life. You are reading it, and when you read correctly, you move correctly. The truth you are learning now does not require you to confront anyone or prove anything. It requires you to recognize when to engage and when to remain still. That discernment is rare, and it is the very reason you were not rushed into clarity before now. Observe this carefully, because this is where power quietly shifts. When you stop chasing explanations, the environment begins to reveal itself honestly. People show you who they are without needing to say a word. Patterns tend to echo just long enough for recognition, and then fade the moment understanding arrives. That is not loss, but completion, a quiet form of resolution. You may start to see that a closed path does not always signal rejection. Sometimes it simply reflects that the experience has already given what it was meant to give, and continuation would add nothing further. With this shift, endings begin to feel less like being pushed away, and more like moving forward after learning has taken root. What once felt like separation becomes transition, and you stop measuring value by how long something lasts. There is a growing awareness that staying too long in places where growth has finished only delays what is ready to unfold next. As this awareness strengthens, you may notice others reacting emotionally to changes you move through with calm clarity. The difference is not about superiority but perspective, and it often quietly exposes who relies on turmoil for meaning and who functions better in simplicity. This is not a lens for judgment, but for understanding how differently people process change. Relationships can subtly rearrange themselves without argument or confrontation, guided instead by inner alignment. You may find yourself explaining less, not from detachment, but from recognizing that timing matters as much as truth. Not every mind is ready to receive clarity without resistance, and that difference shapes how connections evolve. And that distinction, once seen clearly, tends to stay with you. Over time, this perspective becomes less of a thought process and more of a quiet instinct guiding choices without force, helping you move through change with steadiness, awareness, and a sense of inner clarity, not need validation. It is part of why your role is changing now. Understand this next insight without overthinking it. Your calm has become a signal. It communicates stability, reliability, and depth without words. People sense it even if they cannot articulate it. This is why certain interactions will begin to feel more intentional, more respectful, and more purposeful. The truth you are integrating is reshaping how others respond to you, even if they do not consciously realize why. You are no longer seen as uncertain. You are seen as centered. That perception alters outcomes before conversations even begin. This is influence without force. This is authority without volume. Let this settle as you prepare for what follows. The entire truth continues to unfold, not to overwhelm you, but to position you. Each realization refines how you move, how you choose, and how you protect your energy. You are no longer waiting for clarity. You are operating from it. And from this position, the next revelation will not demand adjustment. It will confirm what you already feel deep within. Stay calm. Stay observant. The path ahead is becoming unmistakably clear. My beloved child, now the truth reaches a point where it no longer whispers, yet it still refuses to shout. It simply stands in front of you, steady and undeniable, asking only that you do not rush past it. You may feel a quiet certainty settling in your chest, a feeling that says you are no longer guessing. This certainty did not come from reassurance given by others. It came from experience refined by patience. What you are understanding now is that the most important shifts in your life were never announced. They happened while you were learning how to remain calm in moments that once would have shaken you. That calm was not accidental. It was cultivated through repetition, through disappointment that did not break you, and through silence that taught you how to listen inwardly. The truth is revealing itself now because you are no longer seeking it out of fear. You are receiving it from a place of readiness. This is where many misunderstand what is actually happening. They assume that clarity arrives to simplify life, but real clarity does something far more powerful. It removes illusion, and when illusion dissolves, choices become obvious. You may begin to notice that some paths you once considered are no longer attractive to you, not because they were wrong, but because they no longer match who you have become. This is not loss. This is refinement. The truth you are absorbing now sharpens your discernment so quietly that you may not even notice the moment it takes hold. Suddenly, you hesitate before committing where you once rushed. Suddenly, you observe before responding where you once reacted. These are not small changes. These are signs that understanding has replaced impulse, and impulse is no longer needed where clarity exists. Remain steady as this realization deepens further. There is a reason you were not given all the answers at once. Immediate clarity can create arrogance, but gradual clarity creates wisdom. You have learned not to assume intent, not to project fear, and not to personalize uncertainty. That learning has prepared you for this phase, where truth no longer arrives as information, but as perspective. Perspective allows you to see not only what happened, but why it had to happen that way. You begin to recognize that even moments of apparent stagnation were shaping your resilience. Even moments of doubt were strengthening your self-trust. This understanding does not make you superior to others. It makes you grounded, and grounded people move differently through life. Now understand this without letting emotion interfere. As truth continues to unfold, you will notice that some situations no longer demand closure from the outside. At a certain point, you begin to realize you no longer need explanations from people who may never fully understand or express their own intentions. This isn't avoidance, but a quiet acceptance of how things are. The truth does not depend on explanation to exist. It becomes real when you acknowledge it within yourself. Once that recognition settles in, old emotional loops begin to fade on their own. You stop revisiting past conversations and no longer question every decision repeatedly, not because feeling disappears, but because clarity replaces confusion, softening the weight of regret. Hold this awareness lightly as you move forward. A quieter phase begins where calm no longer feels forced but natural, arriving without effort. The truth doesn't come to disturb your life, it comes to steady it. From here, choices feel more deliberate, reactions more measured, and direction more certain. You may not see everything at once, but you grow more confident in handling what appears. Stay grounded in the present moment and steady in your awareness. What unfolds ahead continues to shape itself in ways that ultimately support your path. With time, even uncertainty becomes easier to hold, because you trust your ability to respond rather than control every outcome. This trust doesn't arrive loudly. It builds quietly through experience, reflection, and patience. As it grows, life feels less like a series of questions needing answers, and more like a steady unfolding you can move with. You remain present, steady, and open to what comes next without resistance. In that space, clarity continues to deepen naturally, and with it, a quiet confidence shapes the way you see each step ahead.